This week on a special RSBANDB update episode, we have all the news from RuneFest 2019, including a deep dive into archaeology with Cireon's first-hand experience that has him bursting with anticipation. Also, Ranch Out of Time, Farming to 120, Herblore to 120, all of that and more. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 745, recorded Saturday, October 5th, 2019. RuneFest 2019, an absolute unit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special RSBANDB Update episode. Yeah, and normally we don't do 2 episodes in 1 week, but lo and behold, here we are, right back to back, one after another. Of course, the last one talking about the bank rework, and we thought that was the pinnacle of where we were going to end this year. That's what we thought when we recorded that on Thursday. Then RuneFest happened. And, I was absolutely floored watching parts of RuneFest. Joining me here to talk about this is Cireon. You just got back not too long ago, and, this is becoming somewhat of a tradition, the after RuneFest RSBANDB update.
Yeah.
And, you were there. You were on the floor. I was not this year, and, I enjoy the fact that I am able to produce this episode to the full extent with the normal production set. But I know you obviously missed that I was there, and I know the folks at Clan Quest probably did as well. But nonetheless, we have a lot to go through, don't we?
Yeah. Wow.
Wow, indeed. And, we're not being sarcastic, because, whenever somebody says, wow, indeed, that means that they're likely going to be let down. And, we're obviously on Friday night, the Golden Gnomes happened, and this podcast knows how we feel about the Golden Gnomes, so we're not going to rehash what happened there. But, on Friday, we did get a bit of a tidbit, a bit of a leak. And it wasn't the first leak, but we did get a bit of a leak through the Twitch app that the new skill being released in January of 2020. Well, we didn't get the release date, but we got the name of it, and it was confirmed to be Archaeology. And, coming into this, we had our talk on the round table, I believe it was in July, or maybe August. It might have been July or August. I forget which one it was. But we talked about archaeology there, and, Tanis laid out his theories as to why it would be archaeology. And, for the longest time, I thought, hey, this is just some kind of pipe dream that won't come to pass, just like, RuneScape remastered, so to speak, or whatever they wanted to call it at the end of the day. But lo and behold, it's archaeology, and they announced it at the very first segment of the day, the opening ceremony. What was the reaction in the room like there at that opening ceremony when they announced archaeology? I mean, obviously people knew about it before in some cases, but what did the people on the floor think?
I think people were generally pretty enthusiastic about it. So in a little group, I think, even before we knew about the leak on Friday, archaeology was already sort of going around, and people were all generally really interested about it. And of course, with the recent Anachronia release, it just fits. Like, people saw that as sort of the precursor to it. Yeah. Little tidbit, they were actually developed independently and just happened to come together really nicely, is what I've been told by James.
Yeah, and looking at the reveals, there, as we know right now, there isn't any part of archaeology that takes part on Anachronia, just on the dig site.
Mm-hmm. So,
of course, today, fast forward to the RuneScape reveals. We're going to talk about what else you saw at RuneFest after this, but the RuneScape reveals were big this year, and it's not so often that my brain shuts off, but you guys know why that was after when we get to what was announced after archaeology. But, this is the update that we first heard that, hey, the team's working on something really big for January of 2020. We heard this last Christmas, and you remember our reaction to that, right?
Yeah,
you
Not too
don't
amused.
you don't
Yeah.
announce something that you're working on releasing a year in advance if you don't know it's going to come out at that point in time. And lo and behold, it appears to be on track. And that is, of course, the Archaeology skill to launch in January of 2020. And, just to, tick off some of the rungs on this, it is not an elite skill. It goes to level 120. It is different than the other member skill in that it doesn't go to level 5 for free to play. It actually goes all the way up to level 20 for free to play, which I think is a really nice touch.
It was a thing in the survey. I think it was even level 30 that they
level
mentioned.
30 in the survey.
We talked about it back then, and I still agree that it's much better.
Yeah,
and
I did actually see... Go ahead.
The way the skill is set out is when you're level 20, you will actually have experience sort of a really broad amount of content. So you'll really get a good broad sense of it. And everything past 20 is just going deeper into the stories of each of the different sites. Like the way the skill is paced and set out makes it work really well with this free-to-play restriction. And,
with that, I did manage to catch a brief overlook at what they were talking about in the survey live stream because, the live streams were running a bit late. And when I tuned in, they were talking about the survey results. And the vast majority of people actually agree with us that they want to see skills, the member skills, go to level 30 for free to play, just to give a better experience. But coming back to Archaeology, they are branding it as the gathering skill, the manufacturing skill, and, I think we can also call it the mini questing skill.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. And in the Q&A afterwards, people said that towards the end, it might feel a bit like an elite skill because it is bringing a lot of stuff together. It's bringing like invention and all these skills sort of integrated into. They integrate really well with archaeology.
Yeah.
So they said it might even feel like an elite skill towards the end. That's what
I first thought, and we'll get into what provides these buffs later. But just skimming a bit off the top, it touches combat, it touches agility, it touches magic, it touches artisan skills, it touches magic again with teleports, it touches combat with adrenaline, gathering skills, the Ring of Wealth effect, dungeoneering. It touches many skills as well here. So, I mean, it does feel like an elite skill in that regard. But you start off with a gathering skill. And, one of the things, if you hadn't watched the RuneFest live stream this year, you'll know is that they did actually have a archaeology demo there. And, I don't know how you want to go about this. We can, I guess, start off talking about the gathering aspect of it. They said it's a lot like mining within the mining rework, and that you're not going to be competing with others when you're trying to get the resources and the archaeology XP when you're using your Matic. But at the same time, you're going to be doing it socially with everybody else. And I think this is a good time to probably dip into what you saw in the demo about the gathering side of it.
Yeah. So the demo they had set out was actually two parts. So they would give you the tutorial, so you would sort of understand the base mechanics, and then they would just level you up to level 30 now and drop you into one of the dig sites, just to really get a hold of the different mechanics and explore one of these dig sites and all that stuff. So sort of two parts of it. And yeah, the tutorial sort of teaches you exactly how to do the skill, and the gathering side is as straightforward as it gets. You have a tiny pickaxe instead of a normal pickaxe that goes on your tool belt, and you click an excavation site.
Do you get down on your hands and knees?
Yeah, pretty much. You just start uncovering it, and you get you make progress. There's a progress bar on top of it, and that's it. So the things you can get out of excavating, you can get 4 different things. Sorry. So the first one is soil, which is just the actual ground. It's sort of what happens if you fail to collect anything else. We'll get back to soil in a bit, actually. Then you can get materials. So materials are the resources, the gathering resources. You get things like Imperial Steel or a Third Age Iron or, bits like that. Then you get relics. No, sorry. Artifacts. I keep confusing these
Artifacts turn into relics, I believe.
No, not quite.
Okay.
So artifacts are the things that they are damaged things that you can repair.
Okay.
And the thing I found, for example, was a broken sword, a broken nice sword. And to fix it, you use the materials you get. So the materials are going to be tradable, whereas the artifacts are not. So you should sort of see the artifacts as your summoning charms, towards the secondaries being the materials.
And the materials you also get from excavating, right?
Yes. So you get it through the same means.
Okay.
That being said, you'll probably gain relics at a slightly faster pace than materials. So I found more artifacts than I could actually repair in my time.
Do we know?
But there's a tradable aspect to it.
Do we know if the materials are going to be dropped from combat entities? Based on just the way archaeology is set up, I would lean towards no. But it's a question I have to ask.
I did not ask that question, so I am not entirely sure.
Okay.
That being said, though, and the fourth thing you can get is sort of special items. So one of the drops I got at some point were Icene remains, and we'll get to what they are being used for in a bit, I guess, when we go to that side of the skill.
All right. So recapping excavation, then you get this. You get a chance of getting the soil, the artifacts, the materials, and potentially some kind of special item with it.
Yes. Now, what's the soil used for, you ask? Well,
because normally you just throw that away or something, right?
Yes. So at the dig sites, there's actually a little area and you can sort of sieve through the soil, and you have a chance to get materials. So it's a second step where you can recover at a lower rate some of the of the materials. And you get a soil box, so you can actually store the soil in a box, so you don't fill up your entire inventory with it. And for those who don't have enough bank space, each of the dig sites has a box where you can store the materials.
So kind of similar to the ore box then. Or
yes.
The ore bank.
The ore bank.
Yeah.
But from what I saw, and I'm not sure if this was a demo thing or it's going to be an actual thing, the inventory was not shared between the two dig sites.
Okay, and I can see that adding a bit more tacticalness to the skill in that certain dig sites might need different materials and whatnot, so you load them up and bring them there.
And it looked like you started out with 10 slots, I think, for materials, but it looked like there were little lock icons over the other ones, so I think this probably unlocks to get more storage on that one. And that's the gathering aspect, and the manufacturing is now also really straightforward. It's literally you go to a workbench at one of these dig sites, which is right next to the material box, and you use the materials to fix your item, and that's where the chunk of your experience comes from.
The main share of the XP?
Yes. So the fastest way to level archaeology would be to do excavating and really focus on getting the damaged artifacts, buying all the missing materials of the GE, and fixing all the artifacts, basically.
And, it's a nice ecosystem. It works well for Iron Man characters. And, recall when Invention was released, when Divination was released, when Dungeoneering was released. When all of these skills were released, Invention was an elite skill, so by its nature it was complicated. Divination was released. It didn't really have much to do with the divine energy. At the start, people didn't like that. And it was, widely seen as just air fishing. When Dungeoneering was released, it's not a conventional skill. And, the number one thing I remember always talking about people that they want with a new skill is they wanted it to be traditional, but yet different. And I think this hits that mark. Granted, I haven't played it, but that seems the way it's going.
Yeah, and it is so like the excavating is completely AFKable. It's almost the same as mining, basically. And there is something like rock opportunities, but it works a bit differently. So, within an area, at any time, one of the excavation sites will be boosted. So if you use that one, you'll get increased XP and increased rate of discovery. It's how it's called. So stay like sort of keeping your attention and moving between the different excavation sites will actually increase it. But you're also just fine clicking one and letting it run AFK. It's just not as fast.
Not as rewarding.
So it works different. It works different than rock opportunities in mining, but under the same principle.
Okay.
Which makes it feel fresh and different.
It makes it seems like it's familiar, yet it's going to be fresh and different.
Yes.
Now,
and a lot of the parts of this skill have that.
Okay, good. 5 different dig sites.
Yes. So the Varagdis dig site is basically a tutorial area. You don't actually use it as a dig site.
Okay.
So after that, it teleports you to Everlight, and Everlight is a brand new area
in Mauritania,
east of Darkmere. So you know the big building in the south of Darkmere?
Yeah.
East of that is a massive new area, which is Everlight. So
it's one of the original Icene settlements.
Yes, exactly.
And we were just talking about this not too long ago on the show, is that if there was one race you could learn more about, or one race you could have in RuneScape again, I think it was a question from Sunset Fish, was I mentioned the Icene. Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be... So, let me talk about the dig sites in general. So the dig sites each tell their own story. So the Everlight area, I think, had 5 or 6 different areas. You don't all unlock them at the same time. So the way divination works is you unlock an area and you sort of forget about all the other areas. And the dig sites work a bit differently, as in by level 20 or so, you will have unlocked all of them. But you go back because you unlock new areas within the dig site all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you might start with Everlight at level 20, it says here. But then at level 35 or something like that, you unlock a new area and you can progress in the story of that area. So each of the dig sites tell a story, and as you progress through the skill, you can develop each of those stories further by accessing new excavation sites and areas. And you reuse the materials and the old stuff, and it sort of builds on top of each other. So that's sort of how that works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Other dig site names are Kured Et, which is near the Duel Arena. Obviously, Zaros Influence there. That's unlocked at level 5. The Infernal Source.
I believe that's going to be located near the Wildy Wall, near the pub. I think it's a Blue Moon Inn up there, in the middle of nowhere, north of Varrock.
Stormguard Citadel. We don't know where that is.
Near the Temple of Ekov, the random plaza with fountain north of Adoin.
Okay. And Warforge.
I forgot, but I think it's near... I think it is near the Black Knight's Castle, perhaps? I forgot that one.
Now, one question I have about this is that, obviously each one of these has its own central story. I wonder if the stories are going to link up in the end.
I'm not sure. I don't necessarily think they do, because they might bring out new dig sites in the future.
Right.
But, perhaps.
Okay.
But they feel very different from each other.
And that's good, I think, because it creates a freshness with it. So, on the manufacturing side, obviously we talked about repairing the artifacts to get XP from them. But what else happens with this? Because obviously people are going to want to do way more than just repair artifacts and whatnot, right?
I mean, it is going to be the main activity of the
Right,
skill.
the main level up method.
Yes.
And that's fine, I think.
Yeah. But of course, then you have repaired artifacts. What do you do with repaired artifacts? You can do 3 things with them, really. So there's a bunch of collectors around the world, and these are actually existing characters. So the Wise Old Man is one of them. I think one of the ogres in what's the place near
Gutanov?
Gutanov. Bunch of characters around the world that already exist. They're basically collectors, and they have certain collections. It's like a Saradomin collection or a Zamorak collection. They generally group by religion, and they will be interested in that item that you can give them, and they might give you a reward for it. So in the tutorial, you give your sword to a collector, and they will give you a relic in return.
Nice.
And
is this the time to talk about the relics?
This is time to talk about the relics. So the relic can actually be used on a big magically looking obelisk that has appeared at the Varrock dig site. And that is sort of where you manage your relic. So you use the relic on that, and that basically opens the relic screen. And ancient relics are going to be the main reward for this skill. Ancient relics basically allow you to have almost always active perks on your character. They are character level buffs generally,
and no RNG associated with them.
Yes, so the devs have really thought about what these relics are going to be. So the way this relic works is they are permanent. There's a one-time cost to activate them, or to harness them is what it's called. And after that, it is active indefinitely. Now you can unharness it and harness a different one, but then you have to pay that cost again. So to activate one, you have to pay a cost.
Do we know how many you can have active at once?
Yes, you can have 3 of these active at once.
So that's not hugely overpowered here.
No.
I'm looking at this list that you sent, and folks watching the video version will see that. One of them is called Nexus Mod, always teleport to the center of the abyss. There's also one that allows you to not have any rune cost for teleporting.
I mean, it's amazing, but you don't get any XP for teleporting.
Okay. The one I'm most looking at is Healthy Herbs. Herb patches are always protected.
I knew you were going to look at that one, yeah. There's some flat-out XP buffs as well for groups of skills, if that's your thing. It's worth saying none of these are final.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is the thing they're looking at. And one thing you are going to see is that none of this is chance-based. So if you think about the Memorial Gothics, you have like these, whenever you're thieving, you have a chance to get a memory shard. There's none of that. And they said very explicitly that that's not something they want to do. They really want this to be a permanent effect on your character. This is part of you. And they're even looking at showing this as part of your examine. Like, it is completely, it's you. So that's sort of how they're looking at these relics. And, I think a lot of these effects are really cool and interesting as well.
Rune pouches never degrade.
Mm-hmm. It's great how much it covers both skilling, utility, and combat.
Yeah,
like
and that's why people were saying it felt like an elite skill.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one on here that I mean I don't know if this is foreshadowing anything. It says all reputation gains are 10% faster, though we only have one reputation system in game right now, Menaphos. I wonder if there's going to be more reputation associated with this somewhere.
Perhaps it includes things like respect in Artisan's Workshop.
Yeah, that would make sense. Which one of these?
I think the one that
on here stands out the most to you. Which one of these on here stands out the most to you?
I think the one that was mentioned was Darok's effect. Basically, I don't know how it's called. Basically, you do more damage as your health is lower.
Berserker's Frenzy.
Yeah, it basically gives you the effect of Darok's barrow set permanently. So people were, I mean, that's pretty overpowered. So yeah, endurance, no drain energy, no run energy drained at all.
I remember there was a time when they were thinking of removing run energy.
Yeah. Which otherwise?
So are there any in here that
sticky
affect
fingers.
thieving?
Sticky fingers.
Automatically start your
next pickpocket action until you're caught. That basically gives you pickpocketing worldwide.
You combine that with the thieving cape.
Yeah.
Gloves of Silence, Ardoyan cape, and whatnot. That one, and I think there's lots of these things in here that need to go through a balance pass. In particular, Sticky Fingers is definitely one. Berserker's Frenzy is probably another one.
Yeah,
but I mean, they're good. They're good starting points, I think.
Yeah. I mean, some of these. Did you mention the adrenaline one?
Adrenaline doesn't drain outside combat?
Yeah, that's. I mean, people were looking at that and telling me never any adrenaline stalling anymore, ever. That's great.
Yeah, and I mean, that's as much a quality of life update for combat as it is a feature from Archaeology.
It is. I mean, if you think about that, it sounds really overpowered, but people do it anyway by just stalling adrenaline. So it's just, yeah. But some of these, I think they sound really cool, and there's some really good combinations with all the content in there. So,
Conservation of energy, ultimate abilities, refund 10% adrenaline. Heightened senses gain 10% maximum adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
And, combine that with, this one, Fury of the Small basic abilities generate 1% more adrenaline. You're going to get up to threshold level much faster after firing off an ultimate than you would before.
Yeah.
Here's one that I really like, Slayer Introspection. I definitely hope they keep this one. Choose the max or min number of Slayer creatures when being assigned a task. Because there's some that you just want to have that maximum stack of, like Abyssal Demons, for example, right?
Yeah.
So that's really good. That's really good.
Like we looked through the relics in game.
Oh, you did? Okay. What do they look like? I mean,
so they look like runes. Like the artwork on it is really cool, actually. But it's a pretty simple UI. Otherwise, it's just a list and has all the effects and names. It was actually pretty good UI, I have to say. It was pretty intuitive. So
we didn't ask this when we started off on Archaeology here, but how is the onboarding? Like, invention is complicated in that I can't explain invention to one of my friends who has just come back to the game without having them go through the tutorial. Can I say go do the Archaeology onboarding tutorial and maybe give them a brief overview of excavating, and can that be enough to get them going?
Yeah, I think so. The tutorial is still awkward, but of course very much non-final. So I'm pretty sure they'll smooth it out. But I had no problem understanding it. The effects, such as like the time sprites that give you increased XP, that's not being explained anywhere. But as soon as I brought up the AFK ability of the skill, they mentioned it, and they mentioned they want to make it clearer. So they're very much aware of these information gaps. But of course, they wanted to get the skill mechanics sorted out so they could actually show it to users. So the way they have approached it right now, I think it works pretty well. And despite it sounding somewhat complicated, maybe if you explain it in game, it's really quickly just really easy to understand. So.
Yeah. I want to go on to some of the big rewards now. One of them is Ancient Summoning, where you can summon some specific creatures, in particular Slayer creatures. And we don't know if this is the full list of them, but the ones listed are the Ripper Demon, the Abyssal Demon, and the Calgarian Demon. Ripper Demon's passive effect is to deal more damage to your target according to how much missing health it has. The Abyssal Demon has an ability where your familiar will automatically teleport to your target and deal damage when it teleports. Its scroll effect will bind and teleblock your target. You know, this goes back to the first special of the Abyssal Whip that would teleblock people. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
The Calgarian Demon, its passive effect is to be one of the strongest familiars in terms of damage for its summoning level. Its scroll effect will temporarily provide the player, familiar, and nearby players with a critical strike buff. And, you know, this is just a few of them, I assume, but there's probably going to be more, right?
Mm-hmm. The thing that I had is it wasn't quite clear how you get these from the archaeology skill. That's the only thing that I am not entirely sure of how it works.
It says using a binding contract forged with new materials found in the infernal source and your usual charms, you'll be able to capture existing demonic slayer creatures and summon them.
Yeah, so this is probably just a mechanic that you maybe
with
unlock
archaeology
in the dig site. And it sort of comes into how you unlock relics as well, which we haven't really touched on.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the first one you get traded as a reward, and that's something you can do. But the way most of the unlocks of the skill will work, and I think this includes both certain relics, but also these rewards, are through something they call mysteries. And basically, mysteries are part of the ongoing story of an area. So, I will give an example. When in Everlight, it's an old Icene settlement, and while I was excavating, I found Icene remains. They're not an artifact. They're not a relic. They're not soil. They're
one of the useful items?
Yes.
Okay.
And it tells you that you should probably show this to Vaneskla, who is actually at the excavation site. And when you do, Vaneskala's like, okay, don't know what you want me to do with it, but this other Icene person that we know might be interested in you doing the ritual to sort of bury the remains. And that is sort of a mystery. And as you can see, it's a set of actions that you do. It's almost a mini quest, basically, that will unlock certain parts of the skill and also reveal more of the story of the area. And that is really where the integration with the lore comes from.
This is perhaps also, the most interesting part.
One thing you can get from excavating as well is lore drops, but you know, that's forgot about that. But that's,
I know there's going to probably be some people who are upset about that.
Yeah, and you get a book that has like a log that has all of the lore drops you have ever had, so you don't have a bunch of books. It's actually
so how do you activate one of the relics then that you were talking about?
So the relics, you go to the weird magic obelisk thingy in the Varrock dig site area.
And does that have to...
That opens an interface that allows you to switch them out.
Now, does that have to do with anything with the special Icene remains that you found?
That might eventually lead... So I didn't actually complete that mystery, but that might lead to you getting a relic that unlocks one of the effects. So, yeah, if you follow that, you'll get a reward, and that's how you unlock these awesome effects. So
you have to effectively follow the storyline to unlock one of the relic effects then.
Exactly. And then if you want to activate them, you actually have to build up currency, which you can, for example, get by selling your finished artifacts to museums. And here you can see how the thing comes full circle.
Okay.
Like, it has a whole separate ecosystem.
And that's good. And
excavate stuff, you get 3 things. You get materials through soil directly, artifacts, and special stuff. The materials are used to fix the artifacts. The artifacts are sold for currency, and the currency are used together with the quest mystery rewards to get relics.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and you know, that's really good. And, you know, I am glad that there is a process to unlocking the relic powers rather than just saying, hey, you're digging and you found something, you can go apply it right away. You got to follow that mini quest, so to speak, and do that. And
it's a bit like,
is there anything to do with the artifact with activating the relic powers?
So, not that I know of,
okay.
but they mentioned at the reveals that you might want to hold up onto the artifacts because they might have more powers than they initially reveal. So, selling all your stuff right away might not be the smartest choice. But again, that's not something I could figure out in the demo as to where that would come from.
All right. And, it says one last thing here, and this wasn't mentioned in the talk. During your time excavating the once lost wonders of the world, you'll come across some powerful artifact weapons, which you can restore to become exceptional weapons like the Spear of Annihilation.
They did mention this on the reveals, and it sounds awesome. But yeah, these are like artifacts that you would keep yourself and not sell.
And this sounds like a powerful weapon that you get from skill.
And it's untradeable, because artifacts are untradeable. Unless they make the final product tradable, which I kind of hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too. And, there needs to be, I think, one of these skills in game that is self-contained in itself that isn't dungeoneering.
Yeah, though I think they strike a right balance here. Like, this is like summoning. You have the untradable bit and the tradable bit, and you have to do both the gathering part and you can get 99 with just the gathering part if you really want to. but like the XP drops are like 1, 2, 8.
Right.
Yeah. It's a bit like divination, where getting the wisps is not actually that much. It's the conversion that gives you the bulk of the XP.
Okay.
But you can speed it up by buying stuff. You can actually make it into a money maker by selling the materials. So, like, for everybody, they can pick sort of the balance and how much money they want to spend on it. Like, some people want to sink money into it. Some people want to earn money through it, and it's all possible. Yet, everybody needs to do at least this baseline of effort of finding the artifacts.
That's good. All right, so I want to see if I can summarize this in a few minutes just based on what I've learned on this, and you tell me if I've got this right. So you start off the skill, you do the tutorial, which is going to be at the dig site. You unlock various other dig sites around, and if you're at one of these dig sites, for example, at the one at level 38, you effectively use the gathering side of the skill, and you use that to, of course, gather potential artifacts, soil, or materials to power up those artifacts, right? And repair them.
To repair the artifacts.
To repair the artifacts, okay. Yeah. And you can also get rare items like the Icing Remains that you got that can lead down an entirely different track and lead to one of the relics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the types of mysteries, but some of the mysteries, one of the mysteries they said is, there's a relic there. You can see it. You just have to get to it. And it's a puzzle. So there's multiple types of mysteries.
It could be mini quest related. It could be puzzle related. I wonder if there's any combat aside in here.
Could be. I mean, so they did discuss the archaeology bit, archaeology during the lore Q&A, and they explained. Like, if you think about archaeology in real life, it's kind of boring. And so they really took this skill as, this is fantasy. We can do whatever the hell we want. And they really tried looking at pop culture as well. And, the Indiana Jones references were obvious.
Yeah, and anybody who watches the RuneFest reveals talk, you'll see the opening cinematic that they had with Shawnee and Osborne there.
Yeah.
So
they looked at that, but they really talked about, we want the dangers of the exploration of a tunnel to be in the skill. We want some of the combat. We want the puzzles. All that stuff is something they want to be part of the skill. They want it to be adventurous. So we haven't gotten a lot of details on where that part would sit, but the mysteries are the perfect fit for that, and I think that's gonna integrate the skill even better with the rest of the game world.
Yeah, and people have been wanting new land masses too, and we're getting that with this. There's also something else that we didn't yet talk about, and that's ancient invention. You'll be able to discover ancient technology and blueprints in this, and of course that'll lean back to the invention skill. And things you'll be able to discover include the ancient gizmo, which covers all 3 types of gizmos that are in game. You'll get new perks from the new archaeology materials, and all 9 slots in the ancient gizmo will be unlocked, allowing you to experiment further and find perk combinations and ranks that were previously undiscovered.
So in the Q&A, it was actually revealed that even the existing invention components will work with the ancient gizmo. But before you get excited and like, oh, I can chuck like 9 noxious components in it or something like that, or get like 5 different effects because you suddenly have 4 more slots, the effects are actually scaled down. So
that makes sense.
The thing you get is you get a lot more flexibility, and it still be beneficial, of course, to do it, but you can still get more powerful effects, but it's going to be a bit different, and it's not necessarily just 4 more slots. It's a bit nuanced than that. Yeah, so that was clarified in the Q&A afterwards.
There's also the XP capacitor, which will allow you to level up your augmented items faster, effectively giving them double XP, or siphoning them for more XP, or to get to level 20. You can use that for this. And an empty XP capacitor takes some of the item XP you would normally earn while training with augmented items and instead fills the device. And once it's full, you can trade it to other players and they will earn double XP, or you can use it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have been wanting that for a long time too, and it's safe to do that with invention now.
Yeah.
The kinetic dynamo, and the idea behind this one is that when you're moving around, you'll be able to effectively create divine charges by just running and surging, and once you've done enough running and surging, it'll spit out divine charges for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get any idea on the number that this would be and how this would interact with the current way of getting divine charges?
Let's hope they balance it.
Yeah, I agree. Because, I mean, there is a certain play style in place right now for people who AFK divine charges just to make money. And, you know, it wouldn't be right to trample on that, I don't think.
From what I understood, it's actually consumed, the object. When you get divine charge out of it. So
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually has some cost to it as well.
There's also new invention tools like the Fishomatic, Hammertron, and Pyromatic, using materials from the past and what you've discovered. You will be able to make them act more like level 80 tools than the level 70 ones that they currently are.
Yeah, the whole time energy was a bit of a weird thing, and I'm not entirely sure how it works with the lore, but there's like time spirits, and in the dig sites, there was sort of like wisps everywhere in the environment. Like, they didn't really interact with anything, they were just decoration, but clearly there's some magic qualities around these dig sites that, you know, probably have some meaning lore-wise that we'll probably find out more, but that's why these tools probably get some stuff from.
They're also bringing out the elite skilling outfit for archaeology at launch, which is good. Very different than what we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm. And going to work on a different system from the fragments. Going to be completely obtained through the skill, which I think is great. I love the ore box, for example. It's not an elite outfit, but it's something that you work on yourself as you progress through the skill. And I hope that the elite skilling outfit is going to be something like that.
Excellent. And, you know, I think there's I have one last thing I want to discuss about this, and I don't know if there's more you want to discuss on archaeology, but we definitely can. This feels at its very core like it is a Mod Timbo skill. And they said right on stage that he had been pitching this for, you know, the last 2 to 3 years. And lo and behold, it's finally being built. And this is, I think, what the game needs. Because it is a wide-spanning level-a-thon, let's just say, that touches many different skills. And hopefully will provide some much needed oomph to those skills, I think.
Yeah, and this is only the start of this skill as well. And this comes to one of the things I was most impressed by. So,
actually, I just want to put one more
completely...
thought in your head before you do this. What if one of the things where we can go with this skill is the skilling offhands?
Yeah, perhaps. I like that. Yeah, this is like as I was saying, they really thought ahead with this skill. So the mechanics we're getting are the core skill loop, is how I'm going to call it.
Yeah,
this is the core of the skill. This is what making a fire is for fire making, and chopping a tree is for woodcutting. That's what this is. That doesn't mean this is gonna ever be the only training method. They are thinking about doing high intensity, high XP, or high intensity, high profit methods for this as well. But they want to make sure that, like every other skill in RuneScape, they
get the
one
base
core
right.
loop,
yeah,
and that works, and then build all the rest on top of that. So that is what this is, and I asked a bunch of questions, and the answers were always really forward-looking, and we thought about this, we covered this, and that's great.
Who out of curiosity were you asking the questions to? Who out of curiosity were you asking the questions to?
I forgot the name of this mod. Okay. I feel really bad for him. But he was on the reviewers Q&A, and
all right.
He was sitting between Mod Raven and Mod Pips. So find that mod's name. It's that guy. He was super excited to talk about this stuff. He was clearly really annoyed that this was before the reveals and he couldn't really tell anything. Yeah, like they know their stuff. They've been working on this for over a year now. It's been in works for a long, long time. So, it really works, and they really thought ahead. And as you can see in the timeline, they already have other things planned for this skill, and it's going to probably be integrated in some of the other updates as well. And that really impressed me.
And one other thing you were saying is that I remember talking to you about Tanis's archaeology theory, and you said no, this skill isn't happening. This if they do this, no.
Yeah.
And how do you feel now, having played it, having seen the talks, having asked the questions?
I felt like this yesterday. I felt like that this morning when they announced it officially. And then I went to the lore Q&A, and they started talking about, it's not mundane, it's fantasy, and we take all these elements. I was like, okay, perhaps, maybe. And then I sat down at the demo, and I started playing, and people had to pull me away from the screen in the end.
Just like with the mining and smithing rework.
Exactly. Last year, and Shane can vouch for this, we tried out the mining and smithing rework at RuneFest, and it clicked. It worked. Everything felt right away. And this skill feels the same. I sat down and I played it, and I didn't play much, but it clicked. And I talked to the mods, and they knew what they were talking about. And I just have a good feeling about this. Because at one point, I was like, this is like divination, but done right. And then I thought about the exploration aspect, and the fact that this is not just a skill, but also sort of a mini-quest simulator, I guess. So it's also dungeoneering, but done better. And it's also invention, but done better. And all these things I like a lot about the other skills, and mostly things they introduced in fairly recently, like the Memorial of Gothics, basically the entire mining and smithing rework. That is, all those lessons are part of this skill, and it just felt right. And a bunch of Clan Questers played it, and each of us was like, wow, how we didn't know we needed this skill, but now that we've played it, can we please have it? Because it was so much fun, and I wanted to sit there and level up my character that they were going to reset with a single command after that. But Diana, who is in our who's on the podcast regularly as well, told me, like, this morning you were grumpy about archaeology, and right now you're glowing playing this content. And I think that summarizes my demo experience.
And to just speak how you've been feeling about RuneScape in general as well, it's a big thing for you to feel this way about archaeology, and in particular be upbeat and excited about this.
Yes. I honestly, okay, I can say this now. I came to RuneFest almost regretting paying the ticket price for it, to be honest, because I just didn't expect much.
Well, that's mainly because I wasn't there.
No, well, yes, partly, sure, but also I just didn't expect much from it, and then they dropped this and just got it right, and that surprised me and made my day, basically. So, yeah.
All right, that's archaeology. Anything else?
January 2020.
January 2020. That's not all that's happening in January 2020, folks. We got the release date today for Star Trek Picard, January 23rd, 2020. Yeah, I had to throw that in there.
Oh, it's gonna be I'm gonna have to take time off from my work for that month. I mean, it's too much.
Okay. So, what else did we have in the RS reveals? I assume we can move on from that, right?
Yeah. I mean, we had a massive, really long cinematic storytelling from Mark.
The city of Sentiston.
Technically, not really on point. Lots of mistakes in like the sound and the light. But honestly, that's been a theme over the entire weekend. It was just unprofessional throughout. Just throwing it out there. But Mark's delivery was great. I loved it. I'm not a big fan about the whole massive, big storylines. I want more small stuff, but more on that later. But it's got me excited. It was a really good way of telling the story.
Yeah,
and then the city of Sentiston, wow.
That and Desperate Measures, 2 quests that are on the way. And, we didn't get much info about these because they just want to reveal a couple of lore tidbits here and there, and obviously they're still in development and whatnot. But
you call them lore tidbits, but this year's RuneFest reveal was party time for anyone who's into lore.
Oh, definitely.
And maybe we'll get back to that on the summary, but
yeah,
I just want to point that out there, that a lot of the audience are PVMers who are probably not waiting for Mark telling like a narrative for 10 to 15 minutes. But personally, I loved it, and I think it was delivered really well.
Can I talk about what's next?
Mod Raven was amazing, wasn't he?
He definitely was.
Mm-hmm.
Coming
you
in
can talk about it.
November. And I completely lost it when I saw this.
I am so sad that you decided not to do a live response live stream.
The ranch out of time.
The ranch out of time.
And farming and Herblore to 120.
Yeah.
We didn't anticipate either of these. But, just given the fact these are my 2 favorite skills, I don't know. I mean, this caused my brain to shut off. I mean, the ranch out of time was good. It was obviously one of the 2 pieces of Anachronia content they mentioned that were on the way. The first one, of course, being Desperate Measures, but now the ranch out of time. This is going to be another player-owned farm area. And, they talked about expanding the player-owned farm before. You're going to get 5 new pens, 2 large, 2 medium, I think they said, and 1 breeding pen, if I remember correctly, as per the numbers there that were with that. But
I didn't pick up on it.
I don't know.
So
I don't know.
You're probably right.
And, great big reptiles, dinosaurs, 14 new species, frogs, salamanders, Jadinkos, apatosaurs, malatops, rex, and
I think we
babies.
should, Rex is not the right name. We should really call it just big units. That's absolute units.
Big dinosaurs.
Absolute units. Yeah.
And, what is going to be happening with this is that as well on here, all of these creatures will be able to be caught either by the way of hunter in the cases of salamanders or frogs. Jadinkos and ripper dinosaurs are also going to be there, but then the large paddocks, you get those, of course, from the eggs when you're killing dinosaurs out on your Slayer task. And, if it's anything like the player-owned farm as it is now, you only need 1 or 2 eggs to get going on that. And,
Yeah, so little bit of info from the review Q&A that they didn't review at the actual talk is that these eggs will start dropping before the update. So there will be a pre-release where you can start getting these eggs so that when the update drops, you can instantly go in there, build your ranch, and start having absolute units breed.
That is excellent.
That's a really weird sentence.
Yeah, it is. And, the farming nerf makes sense now. Why they needed to bring those XP rates down for the first farm, I think. With the farming expansion to 120. And, they said this in the talk, that farming is one of the most popular skills that they have in game since the release of the player-owned farm.
Yeah, that actually kind of surprised me.
That blew my socks off too.
I know a lot of people still hate farming with a passion, but that surprised me, and that's really good to hear that they are able to resurrect a skill like that, getting it to the point where people actively welcome it going to 120. Because if they had announced this 120 before the player-owned farms, oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, I would have been happy.
Yeah, you'd probably also be the only one.
You're going to have 11 new kinds of produce, including dragon fruit, avocado, stink shrooms. I guess those are some kind of mushrooms. Guarana, I don't know what that is. And at 119 farming, you unlock something called the money tree. Did anybody ask any questions about the money tree?
No. But I think it's hilarious.
How about the farming guild?
No.
I missed where that was going to be because my brain was shut off at that point. But
that looked like the player-owned farm, but transformed by making a tree grow to it.
Okay.
Oh, I missed something on archaeology.
Okay. The Archaeology Guild.
Yes.
Okay.
So something they didn't really mention on the show is that one of the things they're adding to archaeology is once you get higher level, you basically start having people work for you and doing research for you.
And there's the player-owned aspect again, like Anachronia.
And they will do that work while you're offline. You basically set them on little adventures and tasks. They will do stuff while you're offline. So that's the management aspect.
That's a whole new system in itself.
Yeah. Sorry, missed that. That will also exist. That's also pretty much all the details I have on it. But yeah, just wanted to throw that in there because I know the farming guild is going to have something like this as well.
Yeah, it's going to be the remote farming machine. This will allow you to view and manage your farming patches from afar. And, they did try a bit of this with the various farming amulets and whatnot. And yeah, it's definitely going to be at the Manor Farm. And, the next part on this about what they were taking to 120 with this is, of course, 120 Herblore.
You missed the farmers that you can help to build their own farm.
Oh, was that in the reveals or the Q&A? Like I said,
no, that wasn't a reveal.
Okay.
Like, once you get high enough levels, you can help other farmers start up their farms.
Oh,
That sounds amazing.
it really does.
But you've missed the absolute highlight of these farming upgrades.
The master farming perk, all patches are super
Grand Granny.
composted.
Grand Granny.
And you know, that is precisely why Mod Raven had to go out on stage with that
Yeah.
in the same garb as last year.
Yeah.
But in addition to being super composted, the perk will increase health and happiness of all animals by 20%.
Once a day.
Once a day. I honestly don't know what I'm more excited for, this or archaeology. I think it's got to be this.
Yeah.
Herblore to 120 is, of course, going to be coming in alongside this, and other potions that are going to be brought in with this, of course, include the Weapon Poison +++, Prayer and Summoning, Combination Potion, a Charming Potion that will allow you to gather charms at double the normal rate, the Potion of Harvest and Primal Feast. Regular allotments will mutate into mega crops. You know, they got to give a reason to use allotments post 120, and there we have it. The Primal Feast will also be the best in slot food, and a Blessed Flask, which is going to be like Masterwork, and at the end you'll be able to charge it with hundreds of extreme potions and prayer renewals. I think
love that they're building on these mechanics.
they're
that
building
we love.
on the
Like,
successes of mining and smithing and bringing it out
It's-
to other skills.
beautiful.
And in some ways, farming is to mining as Herblore is to smithing.
I mean, we didn't expect these set of skills to become.
I was thinking
120.
construction and summoning until
Exactly.
I heard a new skill.
But then they explain it together, and it makes sense. It's an ecosystem between the two. It makes sense to skill them up
And
together.
the farming already has an ecosystem in itself, and tying this in with Herblore will just make it that much more grand.
And for all those people who are like, oh, but, you know, I just get all my herbs from PVM drops, I have news for you. Because they're not adding all the new produce to drop tables for the foreseeable future. It's gonna be just farming that gets all this stuff.
And you know who's been asking for that?
Well, I have a pretty good guess.
Well, me and many other farmers and people who, of course, want the skilling aspect to feature more prominently. And, you know, once again, I feel like Mod Timbo's fingerprints are all over this, just like with archaeology. It's
So
providing things that the game needs in very unique and, let's just
Yep.
say, groundbreaking ways.
Yeah. And they were also saying that this update is also meant to be a seed sink. So this is going to feed back into the earlier levels and make that be the intended experience again. Because I
you
mean,
know, we
my
have
guess
too
is
many
that
seeds
the
in game.
Potion of Harvest and Primal Feast
Yeah.
is going to take a bunch of extra seeds that you will need for your allotment patches.
Yep.
Like maybe you need like 10 times as many potato seeds or something like that. And that will improve the skill's health overall much more. So yeah, these two skills are going really in the right direction on that.
And they're my two skills.
And they're your two skills.
There's also talk of power burst potions, so you'd be able to supercharge your surge ability.
There
Craftable,
will be a cooldown on that one.
yeah, and that makes sense.
They actually have test footage of them trying it out without cooldown, including like the insta surge thing. Apparently, you need to ask Mod Breezy about that video.
Oh,
So go ask him on Twitter.
okay.
Apparently, he has videos of them surging like infinitely.
All right. Craftable bombs, poison bombs, sticky bombs, and area of effects. Something for the combat types.
something for a certain pyromaniac.
Oh?
Shira was so happy. Like, we have someone in our clan who loves fire making, and their face just lit up.
How does this factor in? Oh, okay, I see.
Bombs! Pyrotechnics!
Oh, okay, that's great. And the Master Herblore perk, you'll be able to create overloads in batches of 5 with 20% fewer ingredients.
Oof.
I'm not sure how I feel about that one. I mean, obviously this is still subject to change, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you feel about these? And I mean, I'm obviously not providing an unbiased opinion on these right now because, you know, I can't remember the last time something in RS has caused my brain to shut off like this did.
Unexpected is what these skills were. And I wasn't quite sure about it, but the way they explained it, the decision is so... It makes so much sense that this is the decision they make. And it's true. Herblore is packed. You know, between 90 and 99, Herblore is probably the most unlocks you get in any 10 levels in the game. Like, there's so much stuff there. It was time that expanded and that more stuff was going to go there. And, you know, combining that with farming, so clever and honestly unexpected but positively surprised. And while I'm not personally invested in these skills, the fact that they are filling it out with new training methods beyond 99 makes me not completely opposed to training these to 120.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is more than I can say about Slayer.
Yeah, and you know,
they learned from that.
I have 120 in both of these, and you know, I am fortunate, I think, that with the farming side of it, that the new farming training methods is effectively going to be the farm. So I feel like I can, of course, focus on the end products, and I don't need to necessarily focus on the new training methods with it, and I'm not going to be missing out that much from the journey in 99 to 120, but I'm still going to benefit from what's being brought in. We didn't really hear much about Herblore training post 99, did we?
I mean, I'm under the impression it's going to stay the same because, let's be honest, Herblore can be really fast if you just sink money in it.
Yeah.
It is not really in a need of a new training method because, like, as long as the XP scales further for the new potions, you know, just sink a bunch of money in it and get 120. So that's why I think that's not going to change much. But again, speculation.
All right. And, you know, they were asked why update these to 120, and, you know, Herblore's packed tight, farming's one of the most popular, and they want valuable content at each level, which this will provide, they say, worthwhile goals and milestones, and the journey should not feel like a complete grind in itself.
Mm-hmm. And they also mentioned that there were a lot of people in favor of doing the step-wise, like 105, 110, 115. That is definitely something they want to experiment with in the future. So it's still going to come. Right,
and they obviously can't do that with these because these are, you know, near imminent release in November, which would put them in the QA phase. So you can't go back and change that.
They're also not necessarily making every skill 120, is what they said. They just look at what makes sense. And for these skills, it made sense.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's very, very important, I think.
They're not making things 120 for the sake of making it 120.
Right. And, you know, that was one of my biggest concerns when we were talking about the comp cape rework is that, hey, we're going to add capes for getting level 120 in all, and you're going to add a mastery with that. I'm like, why do you want to encourage people to train to 120 if there's no real way of training there yet? So it seems that they're in pace with that, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is November, so that's, at least a month away, potentially maybe a month and a half away based on the way the schedule looks right now. But I think it's time for me to start planning.
I'm so glad that I decided to pick up player-owned farms for the unlocks during the boost month and sort of kept up with it because, this sort of motivates me to really, keep checking out on the farm and, like maybe get sort of start understanding the breeding mechanics a bit so that once this new stuff comes out, I guess when the pre-release for the Dino Eggs comes out, I need to go and learn this lovely thing called Big Game Hunter to get those bloody eggs.
I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but this would be one way for me to get me to continue the skilling pier.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And, they did also provide a timeline in the RS reveals, and I think we can go through that now, and the 2 subnotes at the end of this are really going to make the listeners of this podcast happy. So, First up, Ranch Out of Time, Farming 120, Herblore 120, November. Archaeology, January. Then following that, we're going to have Desperate Measures. Then we're going to have some new pets and a series of competitions. I didn't really get what those were going to be for. Was there anything in the Q&A on that?
So the competition are going to be for the pets, just like with the combat pets. Basically, people can send in the designs, and the winner will be chosen.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Managing Miscellanea Remastered. City of Sentistan. And then in summer 2020, we get the Elder God Wars dungeon. So everything we read between Archaeology and Elder God Wars dungeon will take place sometime between February of 2020 and summer of 2020.
Yeah.
Then after that, we have the Azanadra quest, which to me feels like Dig Site 2.
Yeah. I'm not complaining. There might be an Archaeology quest requirement.
Exactly. And what makes me really happy about that is that can potentially go down the Elder Gods path as well. And this leads us nicely to the opportunity of maybe having Desert Treasure 2. Then after that is the Orthan dig site, which I'm guessing that might be on Anachronia.
That's the Dragonkin settlement on Anachronia, the Dragonkin ruins. Yep.
So that's what we were talking about in the roundtable. That was like, okay, this is really pointing towards archaeology. So it makes sense that this will happen after Desperate Measures, after the Elder God Wars dungeon, and City of Sentistan, and the Azanadra quest.
Yeah.
Now go ahead. I thought you were going to say something.
Yeah, this timeline, it's not just the next 3 months. That's
the next
a year
year
of content they've announced.
Yeah.
That's new and brave, and it showed. This is what we want the RuneScape Reveals talk to be.
And this is what RuneScape 3 should be. Yes.
And I think they have been really smart with this timeline because there's no dates on this.
Yep.
But, this is the time that they started working on the Elder God Wars dungeon. So most of this is locked in. That people have started working on this. Which sort of it's going to split. It's going to slip. Some of this is going to slip. Let's be honest. But
it's only natural.
I think the way they present it is a good compromise.
Yeah. And the subnotes I wanted to talk about is they mentioned how we had the gap in content this summer, and they are committed to making sure that doesn't happen again. And two of the things that tie into that are that they have 2 sub-teams out of the episodic content team. One of them has a goal of making quests regular again in terms of occurrence, and the other is to work on remasters.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the most important bit here for me was them acknowledging it and being like, we messed up, we want to prevent this from happening again, and these are the steps you take from it. That was probably one of the most important things to do. Stepping up, owning the mistake, and also saying that this is what they're going to do about it, so to show that they've learned from it. And making quests regular, it's right up our alley. And what we, in the car back from RuneFest, really liked is that this is hopefully going to make these smaller quests more regular.
Which is what RuneScape was made on.
Yes, because these days it's all 6-stage and big storylines, and they have a place, but they get a bit exhausting.
Yeah,
these
I know
smaller,
some of our favorite quests to talk about were Chef's Assistant, and You Are It.
exactly. That like these tiny little bits are just great, and we got one last year in the form of Evil Days Big Day Out. Just like it sort of tied into the story because it was about Zamorak being back, but honestly, that was just a silly quest, and I loved it. And just give me more of that. Give me more of that.
One thing that came from the survey part that I saw is that there's actually a document that outlines where Elemental Workshop goes after this. So it's documented. Someone just needs to write it.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that this is gonna do good stuff, and the remaster team is gonna be led by Motimbo. So can we just get a clap for that? That's because Motimbo knows what he's doing on these remasters.
Yeah.
So he's going to be leading up that team.
Good.
They haven't decided yet who's going to be on these teams, but they're going to start sort of ramping up over the next few months. Solid commitment.
Yeah, totally. And, I think this one combined with, just the admission that, there was a problem, that combined with all of the reveals, I think cements a very good and bright future for this game. And you know what they're sort of hoping to get up to with the remasters, to get like a remaster out every 2 or 3 months. And if they do that, that's the pace they're hoping for. And if they do that, that's going to keep people coming back. That's going to keep people entertained between all of these different pieces of content that are coming out. Yep. So, splendid. Mm-hmm. Should we talk about the mobile news? You mean the... Yeah, sure. Yeah. There will be an open beta for Android later this year. And iOS will be later next year. Mm-hmm. And we knew this going in. I had an inkling that, hey, we're going to get mobile news. And I said, if there is any kind of iOS mobile news, we got to cover that. But, I did have a feeling in my mind that we were still very far away from an iOS beta, and let alone a launch on this. And, they got to get it right. You can't launch something like a mobile game in this day and age and have it go off half-cocked, especially on iOS. Mm-hmm. So I think we're on a good pace. The Android folks can sort out the UI and whatnot. And I'll just wait till next year because I'm not changing my phone to get early RS mobile. Yeah, and I talked to one of the mobile mods there, and they're really learning about the UI and trying to get it better. So moderately positive on that one. Yeah, that's plus good. We're getting a lot of goodies into the main client for mobile as well. Which marks the point where Mod Pips took over this RS Reveals, which is very unorthodox. I don't think he's ever done that as CEO. No, I was honestly really surprised and was thinking of something else completely, but we won't mention that. Yes. So he talks about the core experience team, and they are focusing on improving the look and feel of the gameplay. Their main project is mobile right now. But that also includes client optimizations. And, it started out dry. They showed an A/B of the current loading speeds compared to their optimized loading speeds for mobile. And, it loads really, really fast. And these changes are, of course, all coming to the desktop client as well. And, people thought, you thought in particular, okay, is that really what we're going to show here today? No. No. And I'll let you take it from here because you realized this after the fact that you actually witnessed this in the Archaeology demo. Yeah, so the cutscene, there were 2 cutscenes, I think. One when you enter Everlight, and one when you sort of start in the area with the tutorial. And you sort of pan cinematically through the area, and we're like, wow, this environment looks amazing. What we hadn't realized is that a lot of the new assets actually use the new material rendering system that they've been building, and gave a bunch of previews of the
So the metallic stuff that they have basically that they showed on stream looked really, really good. And it basically sort of allows them to do more complex stuff on the materials. And technically, building a good material rendering system is pretty complex to get right if you want to make it, like, especially because the game does things like shadows and reflections pretty, no, not realistic necessarily, but they're not cheap technical effects to calculate every frame. So, them doing this and committing to that, I think it will really bring the game to the next step. So, I didn't really notice what was different in the demo. I feel kind of stupid. Part of me feels like I should have noticed it, but you don't notice it. You just notice that it all looks nicer and it just works way better. And I'm hoping that over time, that's what the game is going to do.
Other things include a tree canopy cutout, removing various trees as you're moving throughout the environment. And then so you don't need to move the camera around here and there. Character silhouettes.
Yeah, just awesome.
So that's effectively, or no, that's not the interaction highlights one. Remind me what the character silhouettes were?
It's when you're behind a wall, it will show the outline in like black or something like that.
All right.
Of your character.
And interaction highlights, whenever you mouse over, say, an enemy, it'll be red, an item on the ground blue, and an ally will be white. And finally, movement smoothing. And these ones are on the way. So the one given with this is that when you're running, say, through the gnome maze, you can see how, right now it's jerky. Your character moves in jerky motions and whatnot. And this one just smooths it out and makes it look a whole lot more realistic.
I love the movement smoothing demo because people were like, that doesn't look that impressive. And then they showed the demo in the tree gnome village with the zigzag, and the entire audience was like, oh, that looks really, really good suddenly. And it's really subtle, but it works really well. So, yeah.
And then came the experimental prototypes. These means that there's no release dates, or they're not even sure if they will be released. But these include movement prediction and a faster tick rate. Movement prediction, of course, means that your character will move exactly where you tell it to in a way that the client will update before your character's position updates on the server, making the game feel a whole lot more responsive and reducing the feeling of lag.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, faster tick rates, we really don't need to explain that much, but if you're joining us for the first time, this means that if you're in combat will just respond so much faster. And we saw that on the combat dummies on the video in that Q&A. So I really hope that these ones do make their way in.
Yeah, what Pips was clarifying, what we saw were the experimental prototypes, and it looked good, but that's the 1% of the game that works. 99% of the game is just completely broken. So, they need to really work on this. This is 1 year plus that we're looking at and content, if
right?
Not longer. So.
And you see, that's what we've always heard, is that when we're going to look at improving tick rate and the responsiveness with that movement prediction, it's going to be an upheaval on the entire game when they do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in some ways, maybe they shouldn't have shown that, because I think what we had was already grand enough.
I think it was a good time to show that, this is why we have the NXT engine and this is where we want to go, because RS3 is outdated, and I think they're going to start losing people on that at some point. And this sort of shows we're taking this seriously. The game is still developing technically as well. We're doing engine work. I think it was important to acknowledge, because that's something we have missed in the past. Yeah. When people complain about the tick rate, it's always been, but we're not going to do anything about it. And now it's
we're looking at ways to do something about it, potentially.
We we are now in a place where we can start looking at this, and it's going to be hard. It's going to require many, many changes. But we want to make sure that you see that,
we're actually doing stuff.
Yeah.
And, because there's so many naysayers out there too, right? Who will just say, oh, it's a simple project to do. And you've written game engines before. And
it's not. It's not.
When you have this much legacy behind it is in no way simple.
No.
So
if you have like a fixed frame rate, fixed tick rate in this game, and that changing that is, oh boy.
Yeah.
You're looking at months of work for several full-time programmers to get that done. Probably on a game engine like this.
And, I mean, at the same time, remember last year we said that the RuneScape Reveals talk was too bland and too dry. And lo and behold, here we actually got a vision, not only in terms of what the game engine is going to be, but what the next year of content looks like too. And as you mentioned, all of these are pretty much locked in because they just started working on Elder God Wars Dungeon.
Mm-hmm. And, I think this also comes forth out of the fact that they now have this vision of episodic content and making it all engage with the narrative. You see these themes in these updates. So, the only complaint I have is that we didn't know about this stuff earlier, because they could
have generated a lot of goodwill with us over the summer if they would have had, a technical showcase or something to that effect.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, I understand why they want to keep Archaeology and the farming and Herblore reveals to RuneFest, because that's the biggest event of the year. By all means, keep that. Mm-hmm. But, they could have done a technical showcase or maybe some kind of game jam in the summer where they could have showed off some of the vision, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that's pretty much the RS reveals. Anything else you want to chat about from that?
No, I mean, we all came off that talk a bit taken aback, I think, by how much it was. And yeah.
And that's a good thing, because remember, that was our reaction to the old school talk last year.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing before we move on to your experience there. And, they touched on this in the opening ceremony, and we would be remiss if we didn't talk about it. This year, £175,635 have been raised for charity. They're splitting this 3 ways into around 58.5K for each of the following charities: Rise Above the Disorder, the Prince's Trust, and CPSL Mind. So that's just this year. Special Effect raised over $5,000 the day before RuneFest at a charity meetup. And over the course of the week in RuneScape, one special day was, of course, running where you could claim the balloon and the cape. With that, over 70,000 balloons and capes were claimed. And, we thought we were getting a free item. But for each one of those claimed, Jagex is going to convert them into some amount of cash and donate that to Special Effect.
That's good.
And in total, since 2013, £1,098,520 have been raised by the company for charity.
That's also an absolute unit.
That is perhaps, until the new skills were announced, that was the best news to come out of this RuneFest, I think.
Yeah.
And the community needs to know about that. And, I don't know if there's another gaming community out there based around a game that has raised this much money in the past, especially for such worthy organizations. But this is something that the community should be proud of, and more people, I think, need to know about. So this is a job well done, both for Jagex and, of course, everybody in the community. Mm-hmm. All right. So floor experience. What do we got this year? How does RuneFest this year compare to last year? How does it compare to the event 2 years ago at Battersea?
Yeah, the floor experience this year was actually much better than last year, I'd say. They brought the skill chips back last year. I mean, we talked about it at length last year, how much we queued, right?
Yeah.
And I think they took the feedback on board, because overall it was it felt much better organized, and it just worked out a bit better. That isn't to say that there weren't any queues, but I haven't really stood in a queue for longer than 10 to 15 minutes, I think.
Okay, that's
so
workable. Because I mean, remember last year at the faux Fremenic archery experience, what was that? An hour and a half, 80 minutes?
Yeah, something like that. It was a lot, and to be honest, I still think 10 to 15 minutes is a lot because you have to get 8 skill chips, and if you had to do it for each of them, that's 2 hours of queuing you're doing in total.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, on a day, if you think about it, the day is from like 10 to 6. That's 8 hours. That's a quarter
8
you're
hours
standing
on your
in a
feet.
queue for skill chips.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to go to like a few hours of talks at least. So you don't really have any time for anything else. And it wasn't an improvement over last year, but it still wasn't perfect. Like 2017, I remember I got all the skill chips in the first hour or something like that. And the rest of the day, I was free to do stuff. I don't know how we did it, and it really felt a bit rushy in the end, trying to get all the skill chips. They also brought back Find the J mod, which is you have to get a number of signatures.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so basically you get...
I got your list up here for those watching on the video version, but you can describe
Yeah,
it.
you get a list of like mod names, and not like in 2017 they basically had all the mods there, like a lot of them. And this time it was only a selection of them, because it's a lot of work. So especially the like mod Raven and such are not on here because they just don't have the time to deal with this. But each of the mods basically has a certain exercise for you, like say the alphabet backwards, or give me your favorite music track in RuneScape, or give me high five. And if you do that, you get the signature, and then once you have at least 10 signatures, you get the skill chip. So it actually took quite a bit of time to find the right JMods, especially because like most of these I don't know how they look. So
yeah.
Like you were sneakily like walking around the back, looking what's on the back of their t-shirts, or whenever it was a J-mod with a bunch of people around, you're probably gonna be good. But yeah,
I see one of them is Mod Flux. Give me a quote from the best sci-fi series of all times.
Yeah, ran into him, but he was really busy, so sort of went off.
He
told Mod Stu what should happen in the sequel to the Death of Chivalry.
Nice. So you got Mod Stu, James H, Ashers, Malia, Lee M, Vulcan, Cake, Aerator, Lord, Mark, and Deg.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice that Deg was there. I think he got moved off of RuneScape into the unannounced project, which we haven't heard much of. And he was, behind mining and smithing too. So it's always good to catch up with him. How many skill chips were there?
So there's 8 in total. I think you have a picture of this as well.
Yes, I do.
So there's 8 in total, and you get a 9th one if you get all the 8 other ones. So let me just quickly go to the different activities. I'm going to start on the right with the green one. So the green was a dungeoneering one. It was just a little maze they did. Super simple. Took us 2 minutes. That's the kind of skill chip I like. Then you get the hunter one. That's the find the J mod. Crafting took us a really long time. It was basically you had to cut out like the dinosaur and then paste it to fold and paste it together, and it took us really long, even though we
like a origami kind of dinosaur thing.
Yeah, basically. But the scissors were shit, and it just generally took a really long time. It was kind of relaxing, but it was really busy as well. People were just one corner of RuneFest at some point was just people sitting on the ground making these shapes. So it could be better, but that was the crafting one. Then you have agility. What was the agility one? It's one of these. You have them at fancy fairs where you throw a ball up along a ramp up. and you need to make it go in holes.
Okay.
And depending on the color, you get a certain number of points, and that makes your dino move forward. And it's basically a race with 4 people, and the dino that goes to the other side the fastest wins.
What's the penguin?
The penguin is the penguin hunt. So they have penguins hidden all around the venue. With
I
letters on them.
assumed like plushy penguins, right?
They're like big plastic ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You find them, you write down the letters, you make a word out of it. That's a penguin hide and seek. The construction one was a puzzle with wooden like wooden shapes. It's like a famous it's a square with different shapes of wooden planks.
So it wasn't like the logic puzzle from last year then?
Yeah, a bit like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was that one. That was construction. Range, they basically had nerf bows. That one had a massive...
You have to have aced that one, right?
I completely bullshit it.
For those who don't know, this guy here does archery in real life.
And I got bullied and distracted by a JMod I know, so who was manning the station.
Okay.
But it was a super busy all day, so we did it towards the later half of the day, and they had basically they were just trying to get people through as quickly as possible as well. They had a bunch of extra bows, and they basically had like 5 JMods continuously reloading their bows and handing them to players so they could shoot the things. But that was okay. And then the last one, the speech bubbles.
That looks like they want you to sign up for their Facebook Messenger bot or something.
So the Have a Say is what it's called, was actually different between old school and RuneScape 3. If you were an old school player, you got given a piece of paper and you could write down like an idea for a game thing. And you could put it in a polling booth. And you got the chip. For RS3, however, Have a Say had a different meaning. Because what they had there was a portable recording booth. You went in the booth.
Interesting.
You picked one of the lines, and you said it. And they got all the audio samples, and they will pick the best ones and put them as voice acting in the game.
Oh, wow.
That was a lot of fun.
What were they themed for?
Archaeology.
Oh. That's really special.
There was a long, writing something down and putting it in a box takes you 2 minutes. Here we had to queue for it. We gladly queued for this.
What kind of sound equipment did they have?
It was like, a microphone with... I don't know, Shane. You're the expert. It was a microphone with a thingy in front of it, and that was it. And it was like a completely soundproof box they had put down there. Right. So like good quality. It was, I didn't think much of it. I was like, I fancied the idea of my voice being in the game. And then I did it. I started doing the sentence. I was like, this is so much fun.
Did you get to listen back
to all
to
the
it?
sentences?
Did you get to listen to it back?
No, they didn't let you listen to it
back. Did you have
headphones
on while you were recording?
No.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't really professionally done, of course, but they need to get people to as quickly as possible. But
yeah.
It was just so much fun to do. And everyone we were with came out of the booth with like a massive smile on their face. Like, that was so much fun.
What was your line?
I'll try and do it again, but I'm not sure if I got it exactly right. It's, oh, that's interesting. That's really special. Oh, never mind. That's actually really boring.
Oh, that's great. Excellent.
That was a lot of fun to do. They had a bunch of them. So they had like 4 or 5 fixed ones, and they had 2 or 3 prompts, actually, where you could make up your own. So, I mean, that was most fun skill chip activity I've done in all the years.
Oh
at,
yeah,
at RuneFest.
I'd have great fun with that one too.
It's just so much fun. I was so tempted to go back into queue and go again. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, you get all the 8 skill chips. You go to the merch place. You get a 9th one, and you can get a box to put them in and display them in. And that's the skill chips. A lot of fun. Yeah.
So let's talk about the bag, because I know last year I got a bag, and you said this doesn't compare to bags of RuneFest Pass. So what do we got this year?
Yeah, last year was like a shitty drawstring one, right? Yeah, this year we got like a proper linen bag. It felt very safari, like a nice fabric. You could actually wear it as a backpack if you want. Had a nice closing. It's just really good quality and nice. Like not some cheap stuff. And yeah, it had a bunch of stuff in it. It has the JMod stuff, the Hunter JMod.
I have a picture of this on the screen right now for anybody watching the video version.
It has like a drink voucher. It has a dinner voucher. It has the in-game redemption code for the items in game. It has a notebook, quite a nice notebook. Always has a pin and a pen, a flacon which you can refill with water.
We call that a canteen.
A canteen,
Mm-hmm.
fair enough. It has the Sharpie, so you can draw stuff. You get a lanyard as well, which has the schedule and the map. Really useful. You can just wear it all day. You can put your name on it as well. And of course, the rubber duck. Every year.
What is that rubber duck supposed to be? I mean,
it's a dinosaur.
Okay.
Like with the thing on their face and
it
the
looked
horns.
like a Pokemon to me.
Well, yeah, because it's a dinosaur with a duck face, but yeah.
I love that color green of the notebook, by the way.
Yeah, it's like skills, like reptilian skills, and it's a really proper. Like the quality of this notebook is really good. It's really big as well as.
Yeah, I kept my notebook from last year as a collector's item. There's no way I'm writing in that.
I have started writing in the 2017 one. Okay. It's my diary for one of my D&D campaigns, so it has a special. Like it is a nice diary, but yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'd like them to do after RuneFest is I'd like them to sell maybe the pen or something like that online, or some kind of pen like that. And I'd like it to be. This is going to sound really weird, but I have really high standards for pens. I use one of those space pens. It was the pick of the week earlier this year, and it's the smoothest pen that you'll have ever written with. So I mean, if it was a high quality pen that you could buy, yeah, that'd be fun. What about the merch stand? How was that compared to last year?
Honestly, pretty similar. I haven't really paid attention to it. They sold, pretty much the same stuff. It was pretty popular throughout the day. And I sold the CDs and all that stuff, the orchestral CDs still, T-shirts. Yeah, pretty much the same as last year.
Mats, that kind of thing.
Pretty standard, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and then the floor decoration itself,
Let's talk about that volcano.
Yeah, the centerpiece was a volcano. Inside of the volcanoes where the demos were, they had mobile demos, they had a few normal PCs to play on, and they had Archaeology, of course.
You should have got a video of the volcano erupting, because that was the talk of the young woman on live stream when it started. Oh, that volcano is actually a volcano that erupts. There's steam and there's pyrotechnics with it and whatnot.
It was pretty impressive. There's a bunch of people that made videos, so I didn't bother really. But yeah, like they use like sparklers for actual pyrotechnics. Lots of rumbling, like with LEDs, the red would sort of come down the slopes. It was, it was pretty impressive. One time the volcano erupted while we were inside the volcano. That was that's a separate experience altogether. Like the rumbling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Were you able to feel it in your chest? That kind of rumbling?
Yeah, pretty much. It was really, really sort of deep.
Yeah, we used to have a dragon at the movie theater here at the West Edmonton Mall that would actually breathe fire, and the heat that you would feel from that, you could feel it right on your face. I don't know if there was a heat experience with the volcano or not.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
But even when it came to the noise of this dragon, you could definitely feel it in your chest and whatnot too.
Yeah.
This is probably, based on what we see here of the pictures, this is probably the most expensive prop of the venue this year, I think. Because the rest looks fairly, self-explanatory of plastic, mushroomy kind of things, lots of fake plants and the like. Unless they were real. I mean, probably not, but...
No. There was a bunch of bones scattered around. Because, of course, for old school, this was Fossil Island. So, they had to find some sort of mix between the two. Which I think they managed pretty well. But yeah, overall, I mean, the area felt better filled, first of all. Like, last year felt really empty, if you remember that.
Yeah, so if you consider last year's Farnborough to be a beta test of the venue, and this year to be the actual run with it, would you still like to go back to Battersea?
Yes.
And I'm guessing that's mainly for the central aspect
location.
of it. Yeah.
It's just a location. Yeah.
Because I know you and I, we saw a number of people from Clan Quest that said, hey, we're not coming because it's not in central London. Other people have said, I'll come, but it'd be much nicer if it was in central London. And I've even seen the same thing, too, from people that I follow on Twitter and people I've talked to as well. So
I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this, last year they used the entire size of the area, and I think they cut off a tiny bit this year. I think the main stage area was bigger, so they had less space. So it was slightly more condensed as well, and it really added to it. And I'm not sure if you have a map. Yeah, you actually have a map on it as well.
Yeah, I have your map
on my lanyard. And last year they had sort of tucked the food stuff in the corner, and there was the mountain in the other corner, which sort of led to desolated corners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just the layout was much smarter, the way they did it, with the food sort of to the side in the middle, and then things sort of centered around this volcano. It was just, much smarter. Some of the things that you see on the map as well is the art station. I sadly didn't have time to check them out, but they had artists all day there. They asked people to make sketches for boss designs and put them on like a big pinboard. So that was pretty cool.
Oh,
they played some Pictionary-like games.
I only see
fun.
6 of the skill chip markers on the map here.
That's because Hunter J-Mod and the Penguins.
Oh, no, I see 7. Right, there's 7.
No, you see 6.
Oh, okay. Obviously, I can't count.
That's because the last 2 you get them at the information desk.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And they had a photo booth as well. Didn't go in it. They just had a bunch of props. You could take a picture. I've done enough of that last year, so I skipped on that. But that was pretty popular as well. It was a much nicer experience. All in all, the LAN area was really empty this year. It felt really quiet when we were up there. But
that sounds like it was
improvement over last year.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was a very full day. Not as much waiting around, but still much more fulfilling than last year too, in terms of the activities that were on the ground. And I think the fact that the RS Reveals was massive in this year also factors into that too.
Yeah, it's just a combination of things. Things just felt way more organized, felt more rewarding, and I still felt I wanted to do more stuff that was there. I wanted to go to the art station. I would have loved to spend some time there. I missed one of the talks I was planning to go to. It's just really hard to find enough time during the day, especially if you spend quite a lot of time on getting all these skill chips. You could not get the skill chips, of course, but
Yeah, but I mean, they're a collector's item that you definitely want.
I can't just not do them. So
yeah, and I mean, otherwise you're just really experiencing things, and aside from the bag, you really don't have a memory to bring back with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, alrighty, I believe that is it for what we want to talk about on this special. We'll be back, of course, at our regularly scheduled programming this coming Thursday. I definitely want to talk about the survey and the Mythbusters. We'll see what Tanis wants to do, and maybe he'll come along for that too. We'll see.
I'd be happy to. I mean, if people have questions specifically about RuneFest,
we're gonna have a big RuneFest questions topic this week, and for once, I actually hope that this week's RS update is going to be patch notes.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps there's people listening who want to know something about RuneFest. I'm happy to answer. If not on the show, then ask me in Discord. Feel free to.
And I think our experience has changed because I've been there before, you've been there numerous times now, and there's things that we're just taking for granted that folks who haven't been might have questions about. So if you have any questions about RuneFest at all, please do send them in. You can send them in on Twitter to update.rsbnb.com/ask or on Twitter to @RSBNB. Just DM us or @mention us, and we'll be sure to get those in on the show. And it actually looks like we already have a RuneFest question for this week, believe it or not.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing.
I didn't plan that ahead. I just looked at my phone, and we do actually have one.
Nice.
So, we can work that into the show this week. So we'll be back this weekend for another full episode of RSBANDB Update. And, of course, anything about RuneFest, please do bring it up. But until then, I'm just going to ask you, what are you more excited about? Archaeology or farming or Herblore?
Archaeology.
Okay.
I mean, I've played it, and people had to pull me away from the screen, and now I have to wait until January to play it again.
I have to say farming.
Fair enough.
So we'll be back this week. So until then, take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.
See ya.